Pathak. I work with one of the largest infrastructure conglomerates in India called Larsen & Toubro. We operate across 30 countries, 30. And we have undertaken the largest and most complex construction projects across these 30 countries. On the Brics infrastructure grouping in the Business Council, I have been associated with the Brics Business Council for the last 9 years. And a lot of our expectations from Brics and the Brics Bank have been fulfilled. However, 2 years ago in August 2019, most of us had never thought that the next 2 years would be hit by a pandemic like COVID-19. And I'm sure that all the risk consultants in the business never told us that this is one major risk that is going to influence our business. But all of our countries, the 5 countries, we have seen a severe impact on the construction phase and on the operations phase. The financing phase and the design phase, of course, have also gotten impacted. But at the end of the session, we should be able to say that this is what the impact was on the 5 Brics nations and their businesses because of the pandemic. What is the current status in our 5 countries? And what do you think is likely to happen in the next 1 or 2 years, given what we know now? I'll just introduce an associated theme. You know, because of the Brics Business Council, the presidency of the Brics rotates every 5 years. In 2016, when India was the chair of Brics, many things that are in 2021 did not exist. Just to give you small examples, 2 small examples. In terms of digital infrastructure, we started something like electronic payment system over the telephone, the mobile phone. And that was in November 2016. That's the time we started. Last month, we did more than 3 billion transactions on that mobile payment platform. So that's the kind of change that has happened. The second change I'd offer is, electronic toll collection. We started, I was CEO of a company where it was 16% in November 2016. It is 97% today. So a lot has changed in the last 5 years, and our road infrastructure, our physical infrastructure has gotten better. I am very optimistic that the next 5 years are going to be even better, so that by the time India has the presidency again in 2026, we will be able to tell you many, many more success stories. So this is the background. We have been saying that the recovery in India has been delayed. It has not been derailed. And we look forward to a glorious set of 5 years. On that note, let me begin by inviting all the 5 speakers. We will go in the sequence of BRICS. Let's begin with the speaker from Brazil. Viviana, please go ahead and introduce yourself as well. Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon, good morning, good evening. My name is Viviane Saraiva. I am currently the CFO at Construction Queiroz Galvão Construtora, and also a representative for the Brazilian chapter of the Brics Women's Business Alliance. Queiroz Galvão, Construtora Queiroz Galvão is one of the largest construction companies in Brazil. It's been in the market for almost 70 years, and it has a large expertise in heavy construction and industrial assembly, building roads, subways, tunnels, bridges, both in Brazil and internationally. It is also part of the Queiroz Galvão Group, which is one of the largest conglomerates here in Brazil, and operates, besides the construction, a variety of business like oil and gas, environmental, concessions, shipyards, food, and real estate. So it's very diversified. In relation to the panel, subject, Brazil has been extremely impacted by COVID, like others, being a big country. And as of today, we are the third in total number of cases worldwide. And of course, this has also severely impacted our economy. However, the construction sector itself was already very used to these strict rules regarding HSE. And therefore, the impact in our sites, for example, for Queiroz Galvão, were very limited. During the entire pandemic, we only had 2 sites that were paralyzed due to COVID, and only for a few days. And this was only triggered because of the laws that were temporarily implemented by local authorities and not by the disease itself. And of course, this was only possible because the company, and most of the companies did that, immediately implemented a crisis committee, adopted all the measures to monitor and implement urgent actions, aiming the integrity, the safety, and the health of the entire chain, for production chain, following all the OMS recommendation, etc. And we have maintained all the safety requirements until today. But going back to the economy impact, in 2020, Brazil had a decrease in 4.1% on its GDP. This interrupted a sequence of 3 years of growth in the economy and resulted simply the biggest decrease in the last 30 years. And it was the third worst result in the country history. It was very significant. The first semester of 2020 was especially significant, and for you to have an idea, we had approximately 4% of the formal workspace that ceased to exist. From the third quarter onwards, the economy started to show signs of improvement, mainly due to effects of the emergency governmental financial assistance, which helped to shake a little bit the economy. But this is something that is not sustainable in the long term. So Brazil needs the infrastructure sector to boost its economy and continue to leverage the growth of the society. For you to have an idea of our needs, some studies say that Brazil has a 30-year deficit in infrastructure. So not only the country needs the investments in the sector in order to become more competitive through the construction of railroads, subways, modernization of roads and airports, but infrastructure also known to be as one of the fastest ways to generate jobs. And an increase of 1% in infrastructure investment through 10 years would represent an increase of 2% in the country's GDP growth for the same period. So it's very relevant. And Brazil has a very significant investment plan already in place for infrastructure through the PPI, which is the Investment Partnerships Program. 2020 was supposed to be the year to establish these investments, but unfortunately, part of it had to be postponed due to the pandemic. But in 2021, a lot has already been done, and the agenda is very busy for the following months. So I hope we can talk a little bit more on this panel about the opportunities in the sector, our challenges, and how we can work together with Brics company to overcome these difficulties and generate positive results for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Vivian, and perfect time management. Thank you.
Good.
We'll move to Russia. Trofim, please go ahead.
Thank you, Shailesh. Dear colleagues, it's a great pleasure to be here to participate in our session. So once again, my name is Trofim Yakovlev, and I represent the JSC Russian Railways. It's one of the largest transport companies in Russia. We operate both passenger and freight traffic in our country and abroad, and actually keep leading positions in terms of freight density, ranks second in the world in terms of freight turnover, and fourth in passenger turnover. Just a few numbers. we give 87% of total freight turnover in Russia, excluding pipeline transportation, and 25% of passenger turnover. But the most interesting fact I would like to highlight is that 86% of cargoes and 85% of passengers are transported by Russian railways on environmentally friendly electric traction, so zero CO2 emissions, no emissions. We have almost 2 centuries experience in the field of railway development, and currently we offer our technologies and solutions abroad and promote various infrastructure projects. So currently the company operates in more than 40 countries, 40 countries. It includes different branches and offices of Russian railways in various countries abroad. And if we look broader on our international cooperations and take into account international organizations such as UIC, OSGD, UN, and of course Brics. So the Russian Railways activities cover almost the whole world. Some words about our projects. So first, I would like to highlight that transit and so international freight transportation is our priority segment. We offer currently almost 200 routes, so it's 200 routes across Eurasia, and which link different points on the map of Eurasia. And if you are talking about transportation from west to east boundary of Russia or vice versa, it will take you only 7 days. So 7 days, 10,000 kilometers, your freight will be delivered from one boundary to another. So it's very interesting point. And of course, pandemic influenced our business, but influenced it, I should say, in a positive way, because we got new freight flows on our infrastructure, because traditional chains, logistic chains such as sea transportation, they were damaged because of pandemic due to different reasons, because of lack of containers and so on and so forth. And our infrastructure, it's turned out to be very efficient, very safe, very fast, very smooth. And we got new cargo flows. So by the end of the year, we expect 1 million TEUs of transit flow via our territory, so via our railway infrastructure. And by 2024, it will be almost 2 million. So it's two digital rates of growth, which we now have and which we expect to support in a perspective. Another segment of our business is infrastructure development. So as you already know, we have almost 2 centuries of experience, so 200 years. And currently we offer our technologies abroad. We implement projects in Serbia, it's in Europe. We also proposed a feasibility study of a line modernization in India. So it's Nagpur-Secunderabad project. And currently we are working out some ways on how to promote this project further, this or any other project with similar technical specifications. Also, we have perspectives in Africa. So in South Africa, in Egypt. In Egypt, we currently have already a contract on preparing a technical issue for preparing the feasibility study. in Brazil. In Brazil, we have also discussed some prospects. And of course, in China, we are talking about development of international transport corridors. It's some sort not precise infrastructure development, but a broader view. So we coordinate development of international transport corridors for attracting new transit flows. We focus on development of border crossings, of a legal basis for transportation, and so on and so forth. Another point.
We will thank you, Trofim. We will take up the rest in the question and answer session. For the audience, let me just say that it has been a privilege to serve alongside Trofim on the Brics infrastructure group over the last 1 year. But I was very happy to hear that your 86% and 85% are on electric traction. As you know, the Indian Railways has embarked on this program for complete electric traction in our network. And like your experience during the lockdowns, our Indian Railways did not run passenger trains, but that made the freight trains even more efficient. So we have achieved very high efficiency on our electric traction freight trains over the last 24 months. So thank you for that. And Vivian, it was so good to hear that only 2 of your sites saw some disruption, and that also because of local regulations. Otherwise, there was no negative impact. So coming to India, Ashutosh, over to you.
Good morning and good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and namaste. Dear fellow speakers, participants from various nations, Brics representative, and our chair of the session, Sailesh. Thanks for giving me this opportunity and platform to just present my views on development opportunities and synergy between the Brics nation. I'm Ashutosh Chanwar, presently working as Chief Operating Officer in Dinesh Chandra R. Agrawal Infracon Private Limited, which is one of the leading contractor of infrastructure business in India, and largely executing national highway projects, airport projects, and metro projects. We have done some industrial projects also. And I have been in past associated with one of the biggest financial conglomerate of the country, that is Island FS, for 11 years, and associated with the large construction projects which we took up on PPP from National Highway Authority of India and other government agencies. Apart from that, I have served in the government for 16 years in National Highway Authority as well as the government of Rajasthan. So having the complete experience of 360-degree for infrastructure in India, specifically in road sector and the other construction sector. Coming back to the our topic today, and would like to speak a little about the current situation of infrastructure and in specific context to India. All the countries under the BRIC has seen a gap in infrastructure prior to even COVID-19. And this economy during the pandemic has contracted in all nations during 2020. And that all are on recovery path. And it is also a fact that the growth is directly proportional to the investment in infrastructure. Now let's talk about the opportunities which is lying in India. We'll talk in detail later, but just a brief. To make India a $5 trillion economy and reboot its growth, India has started implementing a national infrastructure pipeline, which is to be implemented between 2019 to 2025. So, and the projects which are under implementation or in planning stage covers the sector of transportation, logistics, renewable energy, water and sanitation, communication, social and commercial infrastructure. All these projects are in either design stage or some of the projects of particularly National Highway is under implementation also. The large expenditure out of this 1.3 trillion will go to the road sector, that is the transportation sector, and followed by clean energy, which will be about 25%. Coming back to the infrastructure impact in 2020, the first wave, in the first wave of the COVID-19 up to Q2 2020, there were only two sectors which were running, that is healthcare and communication sector. Almost all the other infrastructure activities were standstill because of the stiff lockdowns. Now, government tried to stimulate the economy, and they also stimulated the infrastructure sector, and through the liquidity measures, and lockdown in Q3 eased out, and in all the geographical boundaries returned to business with caution, but not as usual. In the meantime, the second wave started hitting the major part of the country in Q1, Q2 of the 2021. Luckily, the construction of infrastructure and industrial activities continued during the second wave as the government imposed a partial lockdown. But because of the supply chain disruptions, restricted movement in most part of the 2020 and recently 2021 resulted into a gap in demand supply, and this is causing a bit inflation in the construction sector. The award of the projects under National Infrastructure Pipeline also got delayed, so there is a pressure on the top line and bottom line of large industries. Having said so, there was a silver line in the infra industry that it got the chance to calibrate the business model and replan its strategy by switching it to the technology advancement and sustainability and reliance of infrastructure. Certainly in India, the demand for smart will increase and construction ecosystem will be heading towards digitization. The decision making will be based on digital database and will lead to the concern of digital cybersecurity. Due to the restriction on travel and movement of workforce, certainly local workforce has to be multitasked and upgrade in technology, which will require the cooperation from the other BRIC countries. Of course, the business model will be having the sharing risk, which will definitely improve the chances of joint ventures and consortiums between the member countries. This will create the opportunity for the BRIC nation due to the reduction in the infrastructure spending by the government. So there will be a PPP investment in the country, and this PPP investment will definitely open the gate for the other foreign investment.
Thank you, Mr. Chandwar. We will take up the other points during the Q&A session, but you've outlined the developments rather well. In particular, the transition towards much higher levels of digitalization, which were forced by the COVID-19 pandemic, and that is probably a huge benefit for the Indian economy. Coming to Mr. Chen Zhong from China, please go ahead with your introduction as well. Thank you.
Okay, dear Mr. Pasak, dear friends from BRICS countries, I'm Chen Zhong from China Communications Construction Company from China. It's a very pleasure to attend the BRICS Business Forum 2021. On behalf of CCCC, I would like to take this opportunity to send my best wishes to all of you. CCCC is able to provide a whole package solution for transportation and urban infrastructure, from design, construction, investment, to financing and operation. Our business footprint covers 150 countries and regions. We have been the largest international contractor in Asia for 14 years. This year, we ranked the 61st at Global Fortune 500. The BRICS Business Forum plays a very important role in promoting business cooperation among Brics countries, and CCCC has developing our business in Brics countries for many years. We have followed and participated in several projects in South Africa, Russia, and Brazil, as well as in India, and acquired the large design and consulting firm in Brazil in 2017, which marks a new milestone for our business. In the future, CCCC will continue to work for the vision of making the world smoother, city more livable, and life better. Continue to work for the Belt and Road Initiative, enhance international cooperation, and build more and better infrastructure projects. As we all know, the world is undergoing big change right now, and we are facing many challenges, such as COVID-19 pandemic and economic uncertainties. However, we also need to see opportunity among the challenges. Firstly, many countries still have a strong demand for infrastructure to boost economy, and this trend has not changed. They still rely on infrastructure investment to drive economic growth. According to the research, global infrastructure investment in 2021 will grow by 7.4%. Secondly, we are facing many opportunities from infrastructure transformation. With the targets of carbon peak and carbon neutrality, integration of digital infrastructure will traditionally infrastructure, upgrading of technology and the business model, we still have a lot to do. Thirdly, there is still strong call for international cooperation. As present, the trend of multilateralism in the world has not fundamentally changed, and the call for communication and collaboration is still strong. In terms of priority development matters in post-epidemic era, we would like to share with you the following 4 points. First, we shall focus on public health infrastructure needs. After the pandemic, the international community has paid much more attention to medical and health care. Many countries have started to construction of urban water supply and drainage, community hospitals, and affordable houses. Least developed country and some developing countries are expected to benefit from international assistance, and the urban infrastructure is expected to show rapid growth in the short term, such as renovation of public medical facilities, construction of smart hospitals, medical equipment plants, and other health facilities. Second, we shall focus on green infrastructure. With the targets of carbon peak and carbon neutrality, green infrastructure face huge development opportunity. For example, in 2020, the overall demand for electricity has decreased, but the demand for renewable energy, such as wind and solar power, has increased. The power generation capacity has increased by 7% compared with 2019. We can also focus on prefabricated building, infrastructure maintenance, and upgrading, offshore wind power, integrated ecological and environmental management, municipal environmental protection, and other fields. CCCC look forward to strengthening cooperation with all parties in the area of strategic planning, key technologies, and projects financing for green infrastructure so as to jointly seize the huge development opportunities.
Thank you, Mr. Shenjong. The remaining 2 points we will take. You had 4 points. You've mentioned the first 2. The remaining 2 we'll take in the question answer session because Yolisa is waiting for her 5 minutes. Thank you. Shishir.
Sorry.
All right. Yolisa, over to you. But I just wanted to say that all the things that you've mentioned, we will take up during the Q&A, including what India is doing. Over to South Africa. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. My name is Yolisa Kani. I'm the Chief Business Development Officer for Transnet. Transnet is a state-owned entity which is responsible for freight and logistics across the region. We operate 8 ports across the country with a rail network spanning over 23,000 kilometers and 6 business units that are operating as individual businesses. Our primary objective, obviously, is to support our economy through the reduction of, by reducing the cost of doing business, supporting migration from road to rail, as well as regional integration. Now, if I go back to our topic, and I thought it was very important that I begin with the context of infrastructure development in South Africa pre-COVID and post-1994. South African government recognizes that infrastructure is very critical for economic growth and is also central to poverty alleviation. There are a number of policies that support infrastructure development for both urban and rural areas. Most importantly, that responsibility is shared between the 3 spheres of government, which is national, provincial, as well as local municipality, notwithstanding the fiscal challenges that we find ourselves in, which is a reason why we're starting to look at the private sector as a partner in implementing and investing in infrastructure. Most importantly, what I think needs to be highlighted is the fact that, especially before COVID-19, is that we had seen rapid urbanization from rural areas, obviously, to the city centers as people are looking for economic opportunities. That in and of itself has put a lot of strain in terms of the need for infrastructure, which is why, amongst other things, we find ourselves with a backlog in the implementation of infrastructure. Going back to the point I made about the various policies and initiatives that are supported by government in terms of rolling out infrastructure, we have the National Development Plan, which has set targets for 2020. And this plan basically seeks to achieve sustainable and inclusive growth by 2030. We're in 2021 now, 9 years to go, through a strong network of economic infrastructure. It is also important to mention that we do have a backlog, and that's something that we appreciate, and it's a number of reasons. The fiscus has shrunk, our economy has shrunk. State-owned entities and municipalities obviously have seen a shrinkage in their, or a weakening of their balance sheet. So it's quite a difficult thing to be, or position to be in, rather, because there's still a need to invest in infrastructure. And at the same time, even before we were challenged with the COVID-19 pandemic, we were already experiencing a constrained economy as well as weakened balance sheets. Doesn't necessarily mean that we don't use and take advantage of this time to reassess where we put our money or where we invest in terms of infrastructure. But certainly it's something that it's a quagmire that we're all trying to solve as government, in particular the state-owned entities. Having said that, I think South Africa still offers an immense opportunity for investment and infrastructure development. According to projections that have been made, we think that we will need about 6 trillion rands to implement the required infrastructure to be able to respond to growing our economy. 72% of that budget we anticipated to be spent on energy as well as transportation. So I'd like to end it there, Chair, as my opening remarks, and just to highlight and underscore the fact that notwithstanding the challenges that we are going through, we still think that it's an opportunity for us to rethink where we invest, and it's also an opportunity for us to bring in the private sector so that when we recover, when we've hit our herd immunity, at least we are in a position to roll out further infrastructure as was originally anticipated. Thank you.
Thank you, Yolisa, and well done on the time. That gives us a little more for Q&A. And in fact, I'll just take in some points made by Yolisa as well as Shen Zhong. You know, the balance sheets of governments have shrunk all across. And you're so right. We also have 3 levels in India. At the same time, the private sector is not exactly very, eager to start investing. So it's a dilemma on whether the government should invest more, which could lead to higher inflation in the short run. But as all of you have said, the multiplier effect of infrastructure is so good that we should actually try to promote more and more projects. The second thing is that National Development Plan, I'll definitely learn more about that. So 1 year down, 9 years to go, we look forward to 2030. Like the National Infrastructure Plan that Mr. Ashutosh Changar mentioned, 1 year, 2 years down, 4 years to go, we look forward to 2025. But in particular, Mr. Shen, it was rather interesting that the Brics Business Council was started in 2013, which is around, 8 years ago. And your company, CCCC, has been the largest for the last 14 years. So that's a really remarkable achievement. I can modestly say that our company, Larsen & Toubro, has been the largest company by far for quite some time. But coming to the specific question that we wanted to pose to various people, we'll follow the same model. We'll start with Brazil. So the question, actually 2 questions I'll offer you, Vivian. So where do you think are the main infrastructure opportunities? And compared to last year, what do you intend to do the next year? And how did various countries that you know of deal with the pandemic? And what are the challenges in our business? Because ultimately, we are not in the government, we are business people generating cash flow. So over to you.
Okay. So as I mentioned, the main impacts for Brazil's infrastructure was the postponement of investments. And of course, like you just mentioned, the huge impact in the economy. And Brazil already had for a few years a lack of public resources for infrastructure investments. So this only worsened that situation. So a big part of the solution now lies on the public lack of resources, lays on the private sector. Not only bringing money to invest, but also presenting better solutions for the problems in the country. The sector, I believe it's prepared for it. The concession companies are keen to invest, and the companies like ourselves at Queiroz Galvão, we have the workforce, the track record, the engineering solutions, everything necessary to execute those investments on the time needed. So continuing the concessions and privatizations plan, we should be able to move the country on to grow. But we, of course, have some challenges. A lot has been done already in 2021, for you to have an idea, through this PPI program, the Investment Partnership Program. We have already launched, the government launched 30 assets for concessions of airports, ports, railroads, totaling 21 billion reais, which is around $4 billion, and plus the concession fees. For the second semester, they already have plans of another 21 assets for auction, totaling at least around $10 billion of investments, plus the concession fees. So considering the amounts involved, they're very big. One of our challenges is, of course, to have different sources of financing available for the private sector with reasonable costs and for long-term projects, because these projects take long, so usually the interest rate goes up very much, and it also for the banks to financing, they have restrictions as well. So we need not only financing for direct investments, but also for the entire production chain. And not only financing, but also sources of guarantees, insurance solutions, and capacity for all those projects from banks, investors, and insurance companies. So I believe that BRICS countries could work together in finding ways to overcome this, like either providing fundings to infrastructure development projects or through the exchange of other ideas. Like Brazil has recently developed a law to incentivize the debentures in infrastructure in order to bring institutional investments to Brazil. So I believe that there are countries here in the BRICS that already have more experience in how to bring funds to the infrastructure, and we could exchange our experience.
Thank you for that. We have in fact learned from examples in Brazil to set up our development finance institution called the National Bank for Financing Infrastructure and Development. And we thought that BNDES is doing a good job. So we will work together on all initiatives. I'm mindful that it is now we have around 18 minutes to go for our session. And we have Q&A for 4 more speakers. So we will have some open discussion towards the end. But Trofim from Russia, specifically, you were making some more points during your opening comments. Feel free to complete. And let's talk about joint infrastructure projects among BRICS countries. Over to you.
Thank you, Shailesh. Yes, of course, I would like to continue to talk about these projects, but first I would like just to give just a very brief comment about the importance of investment into infrastructure. Why is it important? Because, of course, it's already clear, and there are lots of economical evidences that investments into infrastructure, they are directly related to the GDP growth. And in current conditions we are facing now, it is very important to create all necessary basis for economic growth. And investment into infrastructure is one of such cases. So when we are talking about investments into infrastructure, we are talking about GDP growth. And the more you invest, the more growth you have. So this is the point I would like just to raise. So back to the projects in BRICS countries. I would like first to say a few remarks about BRICS Business Council. So Shailesh already mentioned BRICS Business Council today, and also RZD is participating in its job from the very beginning, and also coordinating the work of infrastructure working group. And this year, as it is already tradition, we developed recommendations to the heads of states. They are included into annual report on how to, of course, these recommendations were developed jointly with all the members of working group, and thank you to everybody who participated. So we developed 5 recommendations, and they will characterize very briefly on the scale of work we have in front of us. So 5 recommendations. First, it's a better funding. So it means to create conditions for better funding of infrastructure projects. Second, it's a better logistics connectivity. Of course, we understand that some BRICS countries, they are quite separate from each other. And we are talking about better logistics chains on how to deliver goods and how to create opportunities for people to travel, of course, when we have these limitations down and so on. Third, we are talking about active exchange of technologies and best solutions. Fourth, it's development of urban areas. And fifth, it's to promote ESG, so-called environment, social government principles of development. So these are 5 recommendations, and they basically reflect our interests in promotion of joint projects. So we are not talking, if we are talking about infrastructure development, we are talking about, so it's in a broader sense. So we are talking about exchange of best practices, not only to construct railways and wirings and just to deliver some rolling stock. No, we are talking about HR development. So we preparing people to work on a new infrastructure. We create conditions on how to manage new infrastructure. So it may be some traffic control centers and so on and so forth. We have such examples actually in Serbia already. We currently construct their traffic control center. It will coordinate not only the work of new lines, which constructed by Russian railways, but also all the infrastructure that already existed. And also, we are talking about not only railways, but also telecommunications. So this is also a sphere of business which we have competences in, and Russian Railways offers such services to the Brics countries. So,
Thank you, Trofim. This is actually the 5 recommendations that you mentioned. It was such a collaborative exercise that all of us in the 5 countries worked on the infrastructure working group. So thank you for that. Coming to India, I can make a prediction, Mr. Ashutosh Chandwar, that by the next time that India is chairing the BRICS Business Council or the BRICS group, 2 things will get done in India. The first is that we will have a gas grid across India, which is going to be one of the major infrastructure construction projects over the next 5 years. And much before that, every house in India will get a household pipe water supply. We are talking about 190 million rural households, which will get piped water supply. So talking about what Mr. Shen Zhong was saying, public health infrastructure is going to get attention after COVID. Where do you think India is going to head to in the next 5 years and post-COVID? Over to you.
Okay. You have already briefed that we are going to touch every house with a clean, potable water. That's the biggest project which is going to come up and which is right now in progress. The second important thing is that India will be having the expressway connectivity to all its major towns. Third important thing is that all far-flung area of north and northeast will have a railway connectivity, which is a mighty challenge to complete it before the next time whenever someone wanted to visit the Himalaya, and that they can visit in train. The other the infrastructure that will take up in next 5 years will be, as Vivian said, the urban infrastructure, wherein large number of cities will be connected, will be having the metro availability. So there will be a less pressure on the traffic. That will lead to certainly reduction in the pollution level of those cities. As far as one point which you raised earlier was regarding the aversion of PPP model is still in the large part of the world. But that aversion is for a very short period of time. Once the government come up with the flexible risk allocation with regards to revenue, like HEM model, the hybrid annuity model is quite successful in India. And large number of projects has been successfully completed. Almost 76% projects has been completed, which was awarded in HEM. So that kind of risk sharing mechanism will certainly boost the PPP model back everywhere. And that will attract a lot of foreign investment also, especially in asset management. As I worked in Brookfield also for 2 years. So I remember that Brookfield created $6.2 billion kitty for investment in India for infrastructure, and that too particularly in transport infrastructure. which includes logistics also. So large money is still to be invested in India as far as the FDI, foreign direct investment in infrastructure is concerned. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Ashutosh. In fact, what you said just now also relates to Vivian's earlier point about how Brazil has put out 30 assets, $4 billion US, and they're going to put out another 21 assets. So in a sense, what India is also doing is asset monetization. And there is a lot of international dollar interest in these assets. In fact, I have seen this at close quarters because my company had a 49% shareholding from the largest Canadian pension fund. And I know that international dollars are coming in for the butterflies. They're not coming in for the caterpillars. They're not coming in for the construction projects, but fully completed cash flow generating assets. So we don't have a problem with cash flow generating butterflies. It's the financing of the caterpillars that is a challenge. We'll talk about that more. But Mr. Shen Zhong, you were talking about the 4 points and you had covered public health infrastructure and green infrastructure. Over to you. And also, just talk about where do you think the challenges are and what do you think we will do? Yeah, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you for Mr. Pasak. I just want to finish my 4 points at first. My point 3 is I think we shall embrace new technology. We know many new technology occurred in recent years, and the new technology generate more development opportunities. And the point 4 is Brics company are complementary, and we can have win-win cooperation. CCCC worked in every country for many years, and we prepared to cooperate with the company from the Brics countries. So for the question of for the points of challenge, I think we face 4 challenges. First is, of course, is COVID-19. Although most countries have started vaccination, vaccination worldwide has faced difficulties due to multiple factors such as capacity, transportation, and international relationships, and the progress of vaccination and the development of the global epidemic are still major risk in the next 1 to 2 years. Secondly, geopolitical and other risks threaten the development of the infrastructure industry. Since the second half of 2020, geopolitical risk events have been frequently in some regions. The political game of major countries have become more complex, and the political stability is not optimistic. There are also election changes in some countries, which may negatively affect the infrastructure projects in some countries. The thirdly is fiscal pressure, and the debt problem has cut infrastructure investment. According to the IMF, in order to combat COVID-19, global fiscal spending in 2020 reached about $14 trillion. Large-scale fiscal spending leads to rising inflation and debt, higher sovereign credit risk, which affects the government's financing ability. At the same time, some countries, especially developing countries, have decided to reduce new public investment, and infrastructure projects are likely to be canceled or delayed. Fourthly, industry policy uncertainty has increased. The current complex international situation has an increasing impact on the development of the infrastructure industry. Policy barriers in some countries have increased significantly, causing a great negative impact on the sustainable development of infrastructure. So how to facing, for the question of how to face the challenge, I think 3 points of that. Firstly, we must strengthen intergovernmental cooperation to create a favorable business environment, specifically we should strengthen coordination in laws and regulations according to standard trade rules, technical standards, equipment and material certification, visa application, tax incentives, and so on. At the same time, government should jointly promoting the signing of bilateral investment protection agreements. The joint prevention and control mechanism among governments should continue to be promoted, and the fair distribution of vaccination worldwide should be promoted to effectively protect the personal health and safety. Secondly, we should implore cooperation of financial institutions to solve the current problem of difficult financing for infrastructure projects. Different type of financing institution, including policy banks, commercial banks, and international development institutions, should strengthen cooperation. They should offer financial services to respective advantage. So thirdly, we should innovate business model. We can improve the cooperation level of BOT, BOO, PPP, and other concession models. Invent new business models such as greenfield investment, strategic alliance, business industry finance combination, and etc.
Excellent.
I think we must deepen localization, integrate into a host country, and improve the ability to fight independently under a pandemic.
Thank
At
you.
the same time, we should.
Yeah. We are running just 3 minutes away from closure, and we will give Yolisa. But the points that you made, especially towards the end about what we could do, are so important. And I will be in touch with you on how to work together on this. Thank you. Yolisa, over to you. The future and what do you think? Thank you. You're on mute.
And you warned me. Sorry. Look, let me quickly start with how the pandemic affected infrastructure development in the country. Obviously, it was severely affected. The construction industry shrunk by 14.2% and impacting severely on the cash flow. And because this is a temporary labor market, you can only imagine how much impact it had on the workers. What I want to say, though, is that the way I see it, in South Africa and in particular, the travel patterns, a lot of people travel to work and school. But because of the strict regulations to try and manage the pandemic, people have been working from home and kids have been schooling online. It then says to me, maybe at this point in time, it's not a priority to build more roads, but rather focus public transport towards health facilities, because the quicker we can reach our herd immunity, the quicker we can go back to normalcy, both from a lifestyle as well as the economic point of view. What we found as well is that the reason why most people have not taken their vaccination jabs is because they can't access those facilities. So for me, it's a very important area to refocus on. But if I were to have my wishes and say, in terms of infrastructure development into the future, I would say I'll put my money, without elaborating too much, energy. I'd put my money on digital comms infrastructure. I mean, the digital divide has never been more emphasized during this period. Freight transport, and probably as well as water, because we don't have enough time. I just wanted to highlight those 4 points. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Yolisa. I think you've given us a good framework: energy, digital comms infra, freight transport, and water. And it is 6:20 India time, which means that we have to wind up. I will just take 30 seconds to say what a brilliant panel we had. Excellent comments and suggestions from all of you. And I look forward to being in regular touch with the network of infrastructure professionals across all Brics countries. The Secretariat, of course, is going to compile a report on our discussions. But on behalf of the chair of Brics this year, let me just say that I am confident that we will come out of it sooner rather than later. And hopefully by January next year, we will not have the compulsion of wearing masks in public places. I think the point is about vaccinating as many people as possible. And I'm happy to share that over 550 jabs have been given, 550 million jabs have already been given in India. So here's to working together as BRICS nations. Some geopolitical risks were mentioned, and I just hope that businesses can rise above these geopolitical issues and work together to convert ideas into cash flow. With that, we will close this session. Thank you very much, panelists. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen in the audience.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Salesh, for the nice conducting this session.
And namaskar.
Namaskar.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank
Salesh.
you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
结束了。谢谢 Mr. Shen Zhong. Well done.
Thank you. Bye bye.